we are going to get straight into the panel discussion, which is looking at what APAC can learn from mature markets, Europe and North America's advanced manufacturing. So if I can get you to put your hands together and welcome the panelists to the stage, please. Have a seat wherever you like, gentlemen. No. Now, let's see, I was very impressed with the first panel we had, where they actually sat in the order of the photos. Have the men managed to do it? I don't think they have. I don't think they have, to be honest. Listen, it's great to have this panel here today. Some of the people on the panel, actually all of them, I know pretty well and have met them around the world. And I couldn't think of a better sort of 4 people to give their insights on what the APAC region might be able to learn from some of their experiences in other parts of the world. So before we start, let's just get a quick 30-second introduction from everybody to yourself and your business. We'll just go along the line. So Chern, if I can start with you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Chern Hui Lim, founder and CEO of Canvera. So what we produce is we convert bioethanol to bio-based acetic acid and bio-based ethyl acetate. Those are high-volume organic chemicals used around the world. So yeah, essentially we're ready to, advance ethanol beyond fuel and turn it into chemicals that everybody uses.
Should we follow that sequence? So Jan Weernink, IFF. Most people know IFF as International Flavors and Fragrances. My role within IFF is actually slightly different. We're trying to build a portfolio of biopolymers based on sugars, where we use enzymes for enzymatic conversion of sugar into polysaccharides. And we do that in a way that we can tailor the products so they become suitable alternatives for petrochemical-based polymers.
Thank you. Norbert?
Yes, hello everyone, good morning. My name is Norbert Baum. I'm representing Helm from Germany. We are a globally active chemical distribution and supply chain operator. We have a specific focus on promoting innovative solutions. So I'm happy here this morning and learn more. Thank you, Norbert. Geoff?
Geoff Nobes, Director of Business Development for RWDC Industries. We are a PHA producer located both in Asia and in North America. We are sponsoring this event, so we're very happy to see everyone here. And we have a booth, so please come by and see some of our products made out of PHA. And I'll also give a very short plug for the next speaker, Ryan Adolphson, who is also going to tell you a little bit more about our mission and our products at RWDC.
Thank you guys for the introduction. Right, let's get into it. So the first question I want to ask, and this is not to anyone in particular, so we'll just move along the line, is, I think I mentioned it this morning to Brian, I think we'll all agree the commercialization of industrial biomanufacturing in Europe and North America is a reality, but it has taken too long. Okay, I think we all agree that it's taken too long. We need it to go faster. So what should APAC focus on in order to grow and commercialize at a faster rate than the more mature markets? Start with Chern, please.
Yeah, sure. So to give you some context, even the US has taken at least 20 years to build out its own bioethanol infrastructure. So just to give you a sense, the US produces 45 million tons of bioethanol. So which is, substantial amount. I mean, in terms of, if you look at the bioeconomy, bioethanol essentially dwarf everything else. But the infrastructure takes a lot of development and over 20 years. So the US has 200 bioethanol plants spread across, the Midwest. So I think the US is interesting. We have a highly commercialized agriculture. So you can have a GPS program tractor that spread the seeds and do the harvesting, everything guided automatically. So in the US, we also, if you look at the US today, we can produce 200 bushels of corn in just 1 acre compared to, so the U.S. has essentially expanded significant corn production with the same amount of land footage. So if the Asia essentially want to do the same, you have to, for high volume chemical, high volume fuel, essentially you have to replicate the same kind of productivity, I would say.
Okay, and Jan?
I think the big hurdle is a little bit the isolationist behavior that people say, look, I want to develop something and I patent it and I'm not sharing it with anybody. So I think the key thing to be doing it differently is collaborate. If you have a whole value chain pulling on something, so whether it's the brand owner to a converter, to a chemical producer, or even a feedstock producer, if you're all aligned on the long-term goal and collaborate across the value chain, I think you can accelerate things much faster. Whereas in the past, and I have a background in Dow Chemical, for example, we would invent something, we patent it, and we basically block ourselves. We try to launch it ourselves in spite of collaboration. What we're seeing now is that a lot of companies are opening up the door earlier. So we start thinking about, okay, this is a polymer, what can it do? And work with brand owners to generate that pool, or even create consumer pool. So I think that whole collaboration across the value chain is extremely important to get things moving faster. And Brian, I think you made the comment this morning about regulatory landscape. Europe is actually hurting itself because of the regulatory landscape. It's so difficult to do things in Europe. You think about the nitrogen in the Netherlands or other really local restrictions. I think if you are more long-term oriented, the problems in the middle will solve them. Is how do you get that whole big inertia moved away, and then how do you get that momentum? I think it's collaboration and make sure that the rules that are being put in place are smart.
Okay, and I know collaboration is a word that we'll talk about a lot, and we have been for the last couple of years. And it's companies challenging. It's easy to say the word, but actually doing it is a different thing, right? Norbert, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think collaboration is one thing, but looking internally into your own setup is very important. What we have seen quite often is that startup, scale-up companies are too long sitting on trying to develop their science to 110%, right? And I think it's great. Of course, you need to be sure that your science case is robust and workable. But at some point, you really need to shift and focus. And that focus needs be towards commercialization by adding the right expertises. So not just science and technical expertise anymore, but also commercial expertise, financial expertise, making sure that you have the right investors on board that hopefully have a long investment horizon. So with a focus then towards your business case and implementing speed, I see very often as a deficit. And if that would be a learning case which you take along, I think that would be great, because then Asia will definitely be catching up.
Yeah, so it's about that skill set gap. Identify what you're good at, know what you're not good at, and go and get the people to help you.
Yeah, that's then, of course, it may also be that what you mentioned, that then partners are coming in, right, and collaboration. Because if you feel, I don't have that expertise on my own, and it would really sort of be difficult to build that up. Yeah, then reaching out to partners and make sure that you internalize the external expertise is relevant.
Okay, Geoff, and finally, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the key word that you said, Paula, was focus. So I think, part of the thing that we often see with new innovation, new technology is companies will try to be everything to everyone. And they really, we start down this path, but then, now we got some diversion, then we go over here. So I think really staying focused and having a solid plan, and then executing against that plan is really really critical to being timely in the development of those innovations.
Okay, thank you. And then what do we think? I'm going to lead with you, Jan, here. What do we think is the biggest driver in helping the sector move from lab to market?
It's a good question. If you look at the chemical industry, let's start there. They started 150 years ago. So they invented molecule and moved on from there. They've been able to optimize and optimize and optimize, so they get a very low cost play. I think where we sit today with the biotech space, the scale is a challenging one. And again, it comes with collaboration, because if you invent something, and I'm looking at ourselves, we have a new polymer. If we want to get it to market, we need a partner to actually buy it at some point. We need someone to help make it. We can do the technology behind it. So it's actually that collaboration again that will help drive the adoption of the product. I think then the other part is the scale, because we compete against petrochemicals, which are optimized and low cost. Biotech, by definition, is more expensive from a manufacturing perspective. But we are cracking the nut, and we're bringing down our cost. So it's also the cost and use model that needs to be adopted more, rather than saying, okay, the cost is higher, but there's a trickle effect. I think the driver for us is really, again, it comes back to collaboration across the value chain to generate that pull-through.
Okay, thank you. And Geoff, biggest driver getting us from lab to market?
Yeah, I think, like we said, right, the collaboration, I think, is really a key. Understanding somebody else already said it too, right? Understanding the supply chain and the value chain and working with those partners, because I think sometimes there's some processes where people in that chain are forgotten, right? There's some level of partnership that is forgotten there. So if you think about RWDC, for instance, right, we make a PHA polymer, a series of those, right? We make a resin that goes typically then to a converter who makes an article out of that, and then finally to somebody who's going to sell that article, right? And in this space, I've seen for a long time, the converter step is the one that's often a very, very key component, but is one that is missed a lot. And so getting partnerships, working with those converters early in the process, getting them engaged and on board is a really critical part to success, and moving from a small scale up to a manufacturing success.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I think sometimes a buyer developer can look at sort of talking to the shiny brand and trying to sort of, jump the steps. And we realized that one of the missing groups of people to our events was the contract manufacturers. So we're working harder on those manufacturers and the factories that are actually going to end up making the product for the brands that you need to talk to. So they're in the room as well. And sometimes they're the little sort of, they're the unsexier people, but they're the really, really important cogs in the machine. Churn, if I can come
Paul,
to you then. Sorry.
I think you're absolutely right that converters are a very important part of that drive, because I think, Brian, you said 140 plants that you have that have 125,000 tons each. Just think about that. It's scale, so they need scale. But the second piece is the product has to run on their assets. And if you develop a new technology, like we're developing a new technology, and if it doesn't run on existing assets, they have to recapitalize everything. And think about this, it's a couple million per plant times 140. That's a big CapEx, and that's a big hurdle. So I think that is a very big important aspect of the conversation, is to think about running on existing assets. People forget that quite often. So I think you're spot on.
Yep, absolutely right. Yep.
Okay, makes sense. And Churn?
But sorry for interrupting, but maybe also to Geoff's point, I mean, in the value chain, right, the converters, they come also with different, with certain sizes of their plants. So to have basically clarity, are you trying to implement your product via a mass balance approach, or is it a physical approach, is also very relevant, because that may very soon struggle if you sort of talk to a converter and say, well, there's no way that I have that little capacity to make it physical, and only mass balance would work. So just as another thought to this whole thing.
And while you've got the mic, Norbert, anything else you would add to what you just said in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the value chain, but and with that, keep the final application in mind. What is it actually that you're targeting? Where do you think you have a specific value proposition which addresses pain points of the industry, and where you can somehow differentiate yourselves from conventional solutions and really make a difference? I mean, to also have that analysis in mind. And then, of course, you cannot steer on your own. You need to have the partners to bring it there. But to have that clarity, it's part of your business case and helps you to be targeted and to implement. If you don't have that clarity, you probably slow down.
Yeah, and I know when we've had, at our European event, we had L'Oreal and Evonik on stage talking about their partnership working with sort of, incubators and startups. And one of the things that Fabian said at L'Oreal was that they look to see what is the end goal. You need to work backwards from what you're trying to achieve and have those milestones. They, these big companies want to see, the big objective. Chern, just to finish with you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, because we are a US-based startup, so I actually wear many hats. I take out the trash. I do many things. I run the reactor. I do business development. I do everything. So I can see things. I can connect the dots. I can see things from the lab, from the starting line to the finish line. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, for startup, we had to do things in 3 years that big company normally take 10 years, right? So we constantly are pushing, how to we get to the market quicker and quicker. So I think the value chain partnership, the whole thing, the whole value chain, you don't exist by yourself, right? It's a community. It takes a village. It takes a group of people. It takes stars to align the right way, from the converter, which we are, and to all the way offtake and to a distributor in the middle. Actually, for us, it's more complicated. We need a series of converter in between before we even get to the final product. So, yeah, even for my role, I have to make sure, to align everybody, to, get everybody in sync, to ultimately, get this to the finish line.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to come to Norbert to lead with this sort of next question. What have been some of the early warning signs that you have seen before business failure?
Well, we in Helm, we believe in partnership, right? Because it takes, and we have discussed this already, it takes quite a broad expertise and various skill sets which need to come together. And we can only cover part of that. Supply chain, markets, that's really where we are strong at, and other things we cannot do so well. So in any project, it's relevant to analyze what are the skill sets that are required and what are the partners that bring this to the table. And then I think, and that's to your point, what becomes then really essential is to check, are these expectations, is it the ambitions that the partners bring to the table, are they complementary, or are there overlapping areas where you have then built in areas of conflicts? And we have been in projects where things looked nice in the beginning, and maybe we did not take close enough of a look. And then later on it showed, there's really the ambition of two partners that want to have the same, so we had a conflict there, right? So analyzing this, I think, is very essential. But we also have examples where this works perfect, right? Where basically partners really support each other, and where this is really to the benefit of the project and which creates extra power. So that is, I think, a very essential point. If you do not watch out there at the early days, you may have problems later on.
Okay, so that going back to not just the skill set of the internal company, but conflicts within that collaboration, identifying those conflicts early and really looking under the bonnet and making some of those difficult decisions so you don't carry on, with the wrong mix of people.
Yeah, and if you sort of analyze, oh, there may be areas of conflicts, then also address them. I mean, the perception that you're having may not be the one that the partner's having, where they say, no, this is not the case. So, and then it's clarified, but be transparent there and address it early. I think that's super helpful.
Okay, and right, let's go to Jan, please.
It was just mentioned that you can be all things to everybody. For me, a warning sign is if you're trying to do everything, if you don't have focus, and sometimes out of desperation you start broadening your horizon because one thing fails. I think staying the course is extremely important because it helps you tackle the problems. And I think there's another angle of that, and it is the capital. So I've been in a startup, and if you see the capital dry up, it starts panicking people, and they start going everywhere. They spread the focus, and losing that sense of direction actually is very important, or is actually a big challenge because you don't have built the clarity for the organization. All the efforts that you put in place are spread and diluted so much. So I think focus is extremely important to avoid that, that failure.
I want to challenge you on that a little bit with you and Geoff. Just how do you then balance focus and flexibility? And I know a number of biodevelopers that thought they were going to do one thing for one application, and then another opportunity came their way and they've sort of taken that. So how do you balance that, staying on your path and not chasing the shiny new balloon, but the shiny new balloon might be the one you should be chasing?
I think that is a real challenge. I know of one example, and this is going back quite a few years, but one where for the shiny new balloon, they actually spun off a new company, right? And so it was the same team, but they spun off a new company and then still stayed the path with the original. So I think that's maybe one way to consider it. Certainly not the only, but one potential opportunity.
I'm trying to reflect on myself.
Don't do that, yeah.
So when I came on board, we had well over 200 projects, and we were trying to do everything from left to right and center and back, and that wasn't very effective. So my first couple of months were like, focus. Let's make sure that we find, and we used expertise internally, but also external expertise to figure out what are the most valuable, but also the most fitting projects with the technology, market needs. So you start looking at the whole ecosystem and figure out what are the right priorities. And we rebalance that conversation every couple of months. So we actually stay focused on what we do. And if we feel there's an opportunity that's bigger, better, and more successful for us, we will adopt it, but not just jumping from one to the other. So we have a process in place to validate it. So it's not like someone has an idea tomorrow, and R&D people are great, but they're always looking for to satisfy the curiosity, right? So, we could do this, we can do that, we can do that, we could do that. And that makes it risky to stay focused. And what we're doing, we have a process in place. It's a bit of a stage gate idea, but at least that balances that curiosity with realism.
Yeah, okay, yeah, great answer. Flexibility, but you've got to have structure. Yeah, okay. Chern, let me come to you then. So yeah, what is that early warning sign? Early warning signs before business trouble or business failure?
Yeah, so I would say, you have to know the game you're playing. You have to know the rules, the game that you're playing. So I mean, we know very well. A lot of time people advise us not to do commodity chemicals, right? If you want to do commodity chemicals, you need to have the scale, and you need to achieve a certain process metrics. So you cannot play the games of commodity chemicals if you run like a specialty or make like a specialty, because you need to get to scale fast and quick. So I would say, so if you really want to play the games of commodity chemicals, you need to know your cost structure. You need to know how to win a game. So I'm a sportsman myself, right? So you know the game, you know the rule, you know how to win. So I would say yeah, so if you don't know the rules and you don't play the game right, the law of economics will hit you in the face, I would say.
Gotcha. And Geoff, to finish with you?
Yeah, I think one other thing I would say is looking at the kind of combination of scale up as well as investment. Because I think we all probably have many examples that we can point to where an investment was made at a scale that was far beyond what that development could handle at that point. And then ultimately, because of the investment and the lack of, say, market development piece, lack of collaboration, lack of really understanding the value chain, the venture failed because it was kind of top heavy, if you will. So I think that's the other thing is not growing too fast in terms of that investment, making sure that process, the product, what have you, is really robust before taking that next step.
Okay, so a lot of things you've been talking about there really are, what I would call the sort of basics of business planning and business strategy, right? Rather than necessarily, it could be any sector that you would give that sort of advice to in many ways, I would say. And that's why one of the things we say here is where science meets business, right? That's why 50% of the conversations on this stage are science-led and the other 50% are business-led. But it's about the commercialization rather than purely scientist talking to scientist. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, 2 questions to go. So APAC is often described as rich in biomass. What did mature markets get right or wrong when building feedstock and supply chains at scale? And what should APAC do differently from the start? And Chern, I'm going to lead with you, please.
Yeah, so, yesterday I did the tour, Singapore. So they have tried to build their biomanufacturing. So I would say for each region has their own winning formula. So I think Singapore probably try to aim for higher value, lower volume products. I think you can win that way. But if you want to target much higher volume, like a commodity chemicals, you really have to think about, what is your feedstock advantage, within the region, and match with you have market needs in that region at the same time. So I was born and raised in Malaysia, surrounded by palm oil. So I think Malaysia is, highly suitable for palm oil. So production. So yeah, so in that aspect, so Malaysia, the palm oil is still mainly used for food application. So, but if they want to branch out to use that feedstock for other chemicals, essentially you have to do the basic economic analysis to see if it makes sense, to commoditize, to turn it into a different products.
Okay, thank you. And Geoff, to you next, please.
Just one thought around the U.S. really in particular. If we look at where we have a lot of feedstock from an agricultural basis, right? A lot of times that feedstock is very far removed from what kind of typically would be a manufacturing environment. And so understanding the logistics and movement of the biomass to where it's going to get converted to a higher value product or chemical or what have you, I think is something that really needs to be considered, at least in our geography.
Okay, thank you. And Norbert?
Yeah, which, by the way, the conventional industry has also managed, right? Because very often the oil and gas reserves are not where the markets are. So, but definitely something to observe. Yeah. What should APAC be doing differently? I mean, the hard lesson that we had to learn in Europe and North America over the last years, like if I go back 3-4 years, there was a general, and remember your first conferences in Barcelona, there was a general euphoria in the market. Yeah, bioproducts, and sure, they will get a premium, right? And reality really is that is not the case anymore, right? So for transferring this for Asia, rich in feedstock, yes, but bear the cost in mind that your production process is having. Will you be at some point, and of course it cannot be as you start scaling up. I mean, the economy of scale we discussed, that's a big hurdle. But as you're sort of coming to commercial scale, are you somewhere in a cost position which enables you to compete in the market? If your business case is basically based on dreaming of high premium, that probably is a challenge. So I think that is a hard lesson which we had to learn, and taking that along here is essential, I believe.
Okay, thank you. And Jan, just your final thoughts, please.
Yeah, I would say that proximity is absolutely important, because if you look at where the chemical industry is, it's where a lot of the large facilities are, and that gives them the scale, that gives them the cost advantage, right? You don't want to transport, you don't want to do molecular tourism because that's expensive. So if you have biomass in certain pockets, let's make sure that you also build your facilities, your biorefineries, where the big feedstock components are. I think that is a massive improvement if you can do that. If you start diversifying and you break it up and you build a small one here, a small one there, a small one in another place, you don't get the economy of scale. And I think, yes, you mentioned it, you compete against incumbents, well optimized, been in position for decades. So from a cost perspective, you need to figure out a way to be cost effective. Proximity is very important. I mean, if you ship commodity materials across the ocean, it's expensive. If you ship high value products across the ocean, it's not as impactful in terms of cost drivers. So I think it is the proximity, the biomass proximity, and the manufacturing, and try to co-locate that.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we have a panel discussion on that at the end of tomorrow, specifically on accessibility to biomass. Well, listen, we're out of time, gentlemen. There was one last question, which was only if we had time, which we don't have, but each of them was going to give one piece of advice to whether you're an investor, a chemical manufacturer, a consumer brand and intermediate, or a bio developer. So if you want to go and ask them something, they're here for 2 days, go and collar them and ask them what their one piece of advice would be. And I'm sure it'll be more than helpful. Let's put our hands together. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. Very appreciate it.